Today we're going to take a look at Deltarune Chapter 2's tea theory. For those who don't know about the tea, in Cyber City you can buy 4 flavors of tea, each named after a party member. Each character responds to their self-flavored tea as if it were water and are healed for a minimal amount when drinking it. When drinking someone else's tea, things get interesting. The character who drinks the tea is healed proportionally to how positively they view the tea's namesake. In addition, every character except Kris has a unique dialogue response to every kind of tea. We're going to overanalyze the lore implications of this, but just in case you don't believe me, we'll take a look at teas that demonstrate the known knowns to prove that the dialogue and the healing values represent how characters feel about the people whose tea they drink. Susie is stoked to finally have friends, so she loves everyone tea, with excited remarks and 120 points from everyone's. Noelle is hot for Susie, so she has a ton of points for her and asks if she can get Susie tea in gallons. Ralsei, of course, is fond of Kris and Susie and loves their tea accordingly, but Noelle is a stranger to Ralsei, so her tea only heals him a little bit. On the other hand, Kris and Noelle are somewhat estranged childhood friends, so while they have a slightly higher value than strangers would, it's not as high a value as you see between Kris and Susie, who have built a strong bond by this point. Now that we've established some credence to this theory, let's look at the surprises and extrapolate from them. Number 1. Noelle drinking Kris tea. When Noelle drinks Kris tea, she likes it well enough but mentions an aftertaste. Not a good or a bad one, but a curious one that she isn't quite sure what to make of. We've seen around town that Kris behaves rather strangely during the events of the game compared to how he usually acted throughout his childhood. Regardless of what the player does, it's identified as unusual. From not being able to play the piano anymore to visiting people and asking what's up. For better or worse, Kris's behavior is seen as unusual, and this is because the player's control of Kris is causing them to do things they would not normally do. Noelle knows Kris better than any of the other party members do and would be the first to notice this strange behavior, and indeed mentions it many times. It's also worth noting that Kris isn't fully under the player's control, not only being able to rip out the soul, but also having reactions to things independent of the player's input, which shows that there is more than one will in this person's body, so an aftertaste is a good analogy. Number 2. Noelle drinking Ralsei tea. This is the weirdest one by far. When Noelle drinks Ralsei tea, she exclaims that the cup is empty, and is healed as much as anyone's tea heals themselves, making this by far the weakest reaction anyone has to tea other than their own. This is very weird, and one might be tempted to say it's just because Noelle doesn't have an opinion of Ralsei, given that they're strangers. That's a possibility I won't discount, but that doesn't tell us the whole story, because Ralsei gets a neutral but still normal response to Noelle tea. There are only 2 possible causes for this discrepancy that I can think of. Possibility 1, Ralsei secretly knows enough about Noelle to have some opinion on her. I can see this being true because Ralsei seems to know an awful lot about the light world for someone who's never been to it. Knowing exactly where to retrieve your items in the population of Castletown, for instance. Possibility 2, there's something seriously wrong with Ralsei. What that could be, I can't guess at anything specific. I doubt it's easy as he's a darkener. Maybe he's not even his own consciousness, just some manifestation of Kris's desire to go on awesome adventures with Asriel. He did say on the Tunnel of Love ride that he doesn't know what it means to be Ralsei. But there's not much we can do but speculate about this one. It's a real mystery. Number 3. Kris drinking Ralsei tea. This is the most interesting one, and have I got a lot to say about it. Now, Kris doesn't get any dialogue when drinking teas, or in general for that matter, but the health values we see still show us how Kris feels. Plus, other characters have dialogue that tells us how Kris reacts. So this gives us a rare glimpse into Kris's own independent feelings. Susie's love for Kris is reciprocated evenly, with 120 points from each other's tea. Kris gets 70 points from estranged friend Noelle, which again is reciprocated evenly. So it's pretty shocking that Kris is only healed for 50 HP by Ralsei T when Ralsei is healed 120 points by Kris T. Based on everything we've seen, Kris should have as strong a bond with Ralsei as with Susie, but it seems to be that is quite far from the truth. Regardless of how we may feel about our favorite fluffy boy, it's evident that Kris is not a big fan of Ralsei. So here's some corroborating evidence. At the end of Chapter 2, Susie asks Kris who they would want to take to the festival. If you pick Ralsei, she is bewildered by how Kris sounds, in her words, confused. And there's something more to that. It's Kris saying something they don't actually feel. As I mentioned before, there are several points where Kris's own personality manages to bleed through despite our influence, most notably after the Spam to Neo fight, where Kris is asked if they're okay and apparently yells when you pick the seemingly calm no option, and doesn't convince anyone if you pick yes. My point is that what we are seeing when Kris has that weird reaction to picking Ralsei, according to Susie, is that Kris isn't so hot on Ralsei regardless of what the player is making Kris say. This is pretty strong evidence to show that Kris feels lukewarm towards Ralsei at best, which is kind of disturbing, especially if you've been picking all the huggy and affectionate choices towards him. It's like we're forcing Kris to do this thing that they don't want to do. Now, why would Kris feel this way towards Ralsei? That's a hard question to answer. Now, Ralsei has not shown himself to be the most trustworthy figure. People have already noticed there's a lot of things about him that are suspicious, and this tea stuff is just the tip of the iceberg. A most questionable thing he does is whenever he finds himself alone with Kris, he seems to try to get Kris to zone out by focusing on whatever Susie might be doing. The effect this has is the player following Susie's point of view instead of Kris's. This is the only time that the player ever witnesses things from any perspective besides Kris's. The second time Ralsei does this act, you can actually reject it, but he gets really pushy if you do, which is very unusual for him. This gives the impression that Ralsei is aware of the oversight of the player in some capacity and is deliberately trying to drive us away for some reason. This isn't the only suspicious thing about Ralsei, but I bring this up specifically because both times this happens, we cut back to him mid-conversation with Kris, saying, "And that's why, Kris," as if giving instructions or some kind of explanation. So his goal to focus the player's attention somewhere else seems to be so he can talk to Kris without us being a witness. We have seen very little on the surface that points to Ralsei as being anything but a helpful, sweet bro. So my theory, whatever Ralsei said during these private conversations, Kris must not have liked. Now, I'll restate that Ralsei may seem suspicious, but we have no reason to doubt that he has anything but good intentions, at least towards Kris and Susie. But he does appear to have some kind of ulterior motive, and Kris probably knows what it is. If I had to guess, I'd say he's the one driving the story. Despite his little speech about titans and shadows destroying the world, he wants Kris to open these dark fountains so Kris, who, by the way, clearly misses his goat brother that used to go on adventures with him, can go on adventures with a goat bro whose name is a rearrangement of the letters in the name of the goat bro he used to go on adventures with. So, all we can be certain of either way is that Kris has mixed feelings towards Ralsei. After having been involved in conversations we know very little about, except that the way Ralsei staged them was pretty questionable. Well, those are the 3 tea theories. I feel I should point out that Noelle cannot drink Susie or Ralsei tea under legitimate gameplay circumstances because you never get Noelle back in the party after you get the first chance to buy Susie or Ralsei tea. However, Toby Fox has demonstrated insane detail in these games, So we shouldn't take any of the dialogue he wrote for granted, even if it's not something we're supposed to see.